My name is Natalie, and today I'm going to be talking about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. When I originally heard about this book, I was a little fearful. I'm going to be honest with you. I was wondering, okay, peculiar children, does that mean that they're going to be doing super weird things that are going to turn me off, and that the plot's going to be weird and it's going to be creepy and awful and I'm not going to like it? And then when I was at school and in our book club, everybody was like, oh, we should totally read Miss Peregrine's. And I'm like, okay, okay, I get it. Okay, I'll read it. I was like, I think I want to read it. I've wanted to read it for a while after seeing the cover and everything like that. I think this is something that I want to read. And so I picked it up and I started listening to the audiobook actually. And because I didn't have a copy of the book at that time, and the library only had like certain amount of copies that they could give out, and I thought, okay, I'm already reading a book right now, and it would be great if I could just listen to the audiobook. So I started listening to the audiobook. And from the first chapter, I was like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. And I was stunned, and I loved it, and I was like, why did I not read this so many years ago? Like, this could have been amazing. Basically, the story follows this young boy, Jacob Portman, and his life with his grandfather and trying to figure out his grandfather's life. That's kind of like the point of the entire series. People can tell you, oh, it's about the peculiars, about Jacob's relation to the peculiars and how they all interact with one another. Yes, the book is a lot about that. But from the new novels that Ransom Riggs is bringing out these days, like A Map of Days and the new one that he just posted about the birds, the Conference of Birds, it's really about his grandfather and Jacob trying to get over the loss of that. Basically, in the beginning of the book, you've got Jacob, and he's over at his, I guess, he's working in a store, and he gets a call from his grandfather saying, I can't find something, I think something's happening, something bad. And he gets to his grandfather's house, and his grandfather's not in the house, and he thinks his grandfather's going insane, and he's like, oh my gosh, and he sees like the everything is thrown around the house, and there's a mess, and he's like, it looks like someone broke in, but it's just his grandfather's trying to search everything, and he's like, okay, grandfather's got dementia, and he probably is just going crazy. He's probably just in the backyard. We have to find him. So then they're running in the forest, trying to find him, and they find him, and there he is, like, on the ground, and he's dying, and he tells Jacob about this book and this author, and Jacob is like, what are you trying to tell me? I don't understand. Don't die on me. And his grandfather dies, and he's like, what is going on? And he kind of hears and sees these creatures in the woods, and they're like these giant, really scary, terrifying creatures that have like these weird mouths with tentacles coming out of them, and he's like terrified out of his mind. He thinks he's seeing things, and the story kind of unfolds from there. After going to lots of therapy and believing that he is clinically insane and unstable, Jacob turns a year older, and at his birthday party he receives a book. The book was supposed to be the last gift that his grandfather was going to give him before he died. And in the book is the name of the author that his grandfather said while he was dying. And Jacob kind of is stunned and amazed by this. at the beginning of the book, when they were talking about, his grandfather talked about peculiars and showed Jacob all these weird pictures of flying people and of people who had, mouths on the back of their head, for example. Jacob was like, cool, grandpa, and he was really into the whole peculiar thing, and he wanted to travel the world, and he wanted to do all these amazing things. And then as he got older, he started not believing his grandfather, and his grandfather kind of gave up on trying to push all of this information about what he knew and these pictures that he had of the peculiars and everything like that on Jacob. And as soon as, I guess, as Jacob got older and kind of realized these things, he began to think, like his father, that his grandfather was inventing fantasies about his past, since he lived through World War II, and he was trying to invent a fantasy so that way there were these people who were his saviors from the Nazis. So his father basically believed that the peculiars were saviors or angels that his grandfather had made up as a fantasy to kind of make him feel better about the Nazi attacks in World War II. And when Jacob is, looking through this book and finds that name of the person and everything like that, I think he finally realizes, oh no, Grandpa was on to something. In an odd turn of events, Jacob finds the peculiars and starts to unfold about his grandfather's life with them. It's hard for him to believe that his grandfather had this secret life that he told no one about, but he starts to feel guilty and bad, and kind of the whole book is about Jacob trying to figure out his feelings toward his grandfather and his secret life, and also trying to discover his life as a peculiar. Jacob doesn't know what his power is per se as a peculiar, because his grandfather, one, never told him, and two, the rest of his family thinks he's going crazy, and he was never put into a time loop, which is what these people live in. These people have been alive since 1940, when World War II was kind of like enacted, and they've been living the same day over and over again for basically their whole lives until the present. And Jacob kind of has to discover and figure out about the time loop, and it's all about, him deciding if he wants to be with the peculiars or if he wants to live a normal life. But in fact, he is peculiar, and kind of it's also about figuring out what exactly is his peculiarity. He learns more about these things called hollows, which are people who basically are hollow and do not have a soul. And he learns about the peculiars who have two souls. The hollows tried to become like the peculiars, and it ended very badly with them not being able to be seen by the normal eye. But if you remember the beginning, when I was talking about those monsters with all the things coming out of their mouths, those are hollows, and Jacob could very clearly see one. And that's kind of like where the story goes, in that fact of him trying to figure out what his peculiarity is, why he can see the hollows, and kind of his relationship to the other peculiars, specifically Emma, who was his grandfather's love of his life, but he ended up leaving her, and it's kind of about her as well, and then his relationship with Emma, which is probably one of the sweetest relationships I've read about, even though it has a lot of twists and turns along the way, and a lot of trying to figure out what's going on. So overall, there is a lot of different things going on in this book, and it is definitely not what I expected when I first started it. It was very captivating, and I really loved it, and just, it's very well done. And as I definitely continue the rest of the series, and I'll probably talk about this later, unfortunately, I do not own the rest of the books of the original trilogy. I only own the first one. But I definitely have read them all, and I love them all, and I am continuing with the rest of the books that Ransom Riggs is writing about his, second trilogy, but it's a bit different. Anyway, I definitely recommend Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs.